You belong to a rare group of people, those with deep clarity and inner knowing. You saw the truth, not because it was easy or accepted, but because you had the courage to look beyond the surface. While others dismissed your insights as paranoia or overreaction, reality has now proven you right. You weren't guessing or imagining things, you were simply paying attention to what others ignored. Subtle signs, shifts in energy, and quiet inconsistencies told you more than loud words ever could. Studies show that people often reject truths that are uncomfortable, and you experienced this firsthand. So, while others were shocked by the truth, you had already seen where things were heading. This is the path of the chosen, the ones misunderstood and often mocked, only to be validated in the end. Your ability to see what was coming wasn't luck. It came from wisdom and sharp observation. You noticed the patterns, the energy shifts, and the cracks in people's stories. Where most people accepted confident lies, you saw the truth hiding behind them. You weren't making predictions. You were connecting dots no one else noticed. And even though it was hard to express your insights without being seen as the problem, you stayed true to what you knew. You stood alone in your awareness while others stayed asleep. Being right early often means being laughed at. People rolled their eyes and made jokes when you spoke up. You pointed out the cracks under the surface, and it made them uncomfortable. At first, denial is loud and dismissive, but once the truth revealed itself, the laughter stopped. No one apologized, but they saw what you had seen all along. You never wanted to be right about the storm. You only wanted people to see clearly. Your commitment to truth over comfort and honesty over approval set you apart. What once looked like strangeness now looks like wisdom. Your early awareness wasn't rooted in a desire to be right, but in an inherent inability to ignore the truth screaming within. While others clung to comforting narratives, you embraced the uncomfortable reality. This clarity, though isolating, is a profound form of authenticity. Once the truth is seen, there is no turning back, no feigning ignorance of the inconsistencies and deceptions. Pointing these out often leads to being labeled the naysayer, yet you were simply the one who stopped pretending. This refusal to be complicit in the illusion made you a perceived threat to those invested in maintaining it. You sought no conflict, yet your inability to remain silent in the face of impending issues set you apart. Integrity over comfortable denial. Long before the visible signs of collapse, you felt the subtle decay in the atmosphere. The genuine enthusiasm morphed into forced excitement. Smiles tightened, and praise rang hollow. You sensed the life draining from the collective, even as others remained in denial. Your honesty was misconstrued as negativity, as you quietly grieved the fading authenticity. Consequently, when the inevitable downfall arrived, you were not shocked. You had already processed the emotional weight. You understood the inconvenient truths that others ignored, ceasing to argue with those in love with the illusion. You had already said goodbye to what was fading. This early awareness carries the burden of the ending long before it becomes public, leaving you healed while others grapple with the initial shock. Silence became your shield, not born of having nothing to say, but from the wisdom of knowing your truth would be twisted and weaponized. Every attempt at honest communication was repackaged as drama or bitterness. Choosing silence was a strategic act of self-preservation, a recognition that your clarity was unwelcome in the hands of those unprepared for it. They sought not understanding but ammunition. Your silence, therefore, was not weakness, but a powerful reclaiming of control, allowing your actions and the unfolding events to speak for themselves. You ceased seeking validation and instead prepared for the inevitable storm, your quiet resilience a testament to your unwavering awareness. Often your timing was simply ahead of the collective understanding. Your insights weren't wrong. They were premature, landing in a space unwilling to confront the raw truth. Resistance arose not from the falsity of your words, but from their challenge to the prevailing comfort. You offered a glimpse of the future that clashed with their carefully constructed reality. Labeled difficult or dramatic, you simply possessed a clarity that outpaced their readiness. Being ahead of the curve can feel isolating, prompting self-doubt, yet your deep knowing persisted. This wasn't guesswork, but alignment, discernment, and vision. Many heard you initially but lacked the readiness to act, preferring the comfort of delay. Your voice, though initially dismissed, now echoes in their quiet reassessments, a testament to the enduring nature of truth.
You were the lighthouse, casting a beam of warning that was mistaken for a destructive fire. Your attempts to prevent chaos were perceived as a threat to the comfortable status quo. The flaws and tensions you illuminated were met not with gratitude but with accusations. You stood as a beacon against the impending storm, yet those clinging to their illusions resisted your guidance. Your clarity was the very thing that frightened them, for once seen, truth cannot be unseen. You were the courageous voice in a silent room, and for breaking the code of denial, you were treated as the enemy. The fire they accused you of starting was already burning. They simply preferred to ignore the smoke until it was too late. You witnessed the subtle corruption of loyalty, how genuine trust devolved into a strategic bargaining chip. Shared purpose gave way to self-serving alliances, shifting not through growth but through sheer expediency. You observed this opportunism in real time, the half-truths and vague support signaling a readiness to abandon ship. This wasn't evolution, it was calculated positioning. You sensed the impending betrayal in the subtle shifts of energy and the carefully delayed responses. Loyalty became a performance, a means to maintain appearances and access to power. Calling it out risked being labeled paranoid, so you watched in quiet understanding, knowing that time would inevitably reveal true motivations. The deepest cut wasn't the betrayal itself, but the realization that some were never truly loyal to you, only to their own comfort. The community you once believed in slowly revealed itself as a carefully staged performance, a costume party where unity was a facade. Support felt rehearsed, and praise was conditional, tied to visibility. Authenticity held less value than outward appearance, and relationships were transactional, built on exposure rather than genuine trust. You observed how the tribe only materialized when it was advantageous, and collaboration was more about clout than connection. Those who didn't play the game were subtly ostracized, not for being wrong, but for not wearing the expected costume. Loyalty had a price, and the moment you ceased serving the illusion, you became invisible. The clarity that followed the initial sting was that you didn't belong because you weren't for sale, unwilling to compromise your truth for acceptance in a room full of performers. You outgrew the confines of their narrative without apology. They had constructed a version of you that fit their comfort zone, small, agreeable, predictable. Your assigned role served their need for control and validation. However, your quiet evolution, your deeper questions and independent thought disrupted their carefully crafted storyline. Your growth, though natural, felt like defiance, threatening the established dynamics. No longer willing to shrink to fit their expectations, you outgrew the character they had written for you, without seeking permission or offering explanations. This quiet act of self-respect was deeply unsettling to them, for your truth complicated their carefully maintained roles. Their distancing wasn't a reflection of your decline, but of their inability to manage your expansion. You refused to apologize for evolving, choosing your own clarity over their stagnant comfort. With discerning eyes, you witnessed ego masquerading as leadership, a meticulously rehearsed performance of bold words and confident pronouncements met with uncritical applause. Yet, beneath the surface, you recognized a driving force not of guidance but of self-aggrandizement. Decisions and pronouncements served the image, not the collective. Charisma was currency, and volume often substituted for depth. True leadership empowers. This was about control, surrounding oneself with those who wouldn't challenge the carefully constructed narrative. Mentorship became manipulation, and loyalty was rewarded only when unquestioning. Disagreement was met not with dialogue but with exile. The empire they projected was a distorted reflection, serving a singular ego. You felt the palpable fear in the room, the unspoken constraint against challenging the illusion. Your silent observation revealed a truth that, once seen, could not be ignored. The tragedy lay in how many others also saw it but remained silent for the sake of comfort or fear of reprisal. Your refusal to participate in the charade, your simple act of ceasing applause, became the lotus truth in a space built on self-congratulatory noise. You learned the profound distinction between watchers and warriors. Initially, they appeared as allies, their nods and proximity during turbulent times creating an illusion of shared purpose. They even amplified your successes as if they were integral to the story. However, when the stakes escalated and truth became less palatable, the line of demarcation became stark. Warriors step forward, speak up, and lean into the challenge. Watchers merely observe, cheering from a safe distance when it aligns with their interests. The moment discomfort arises, they melt back into the crowd, prioritizing their own comfort and proximity to power over genuine support. They admired your courage and truth, but only when it came without personal cost. When you transitioned from performance to principled resistance, their support evaporated. This stark revelation clarified who the true allies were, those who stand firm in the face of adversity. You ceased mistaking presence for partnership, recognizing that not everyone in the audience is rooting for you. Your understanding of the impending collapse wasn't based on guesswork or a desire for failure, but on a meticulous examination of the underlying foundation that others chose to ignore. While attention was fixated on superficial momentum and noise, you scrutinized the structural integrity, the hidden motives, and the inconsistencies that betrayed a flawed design. Momentum is often mistaken for stability, and you saw how the apparent success was built upon fragile egos, silenced voices, and unspoken tensions. The louder the pronouncements of success, the more hollow the core values appeared. As others celebrated the facade, you traced the blueprint, identifying the critical shortcuts and missing supports. The eventual crumbling was not a surprise, but the inevitable consequence of a culture of denial and a refusal to address fundamental issues. The louder the warnings were ignored, the more certain the fall became, not as a KQHEN outcome, but as a logical conclusion based on the flawed architecture. You didn't seek the neat resolution of closure. Your deeper need was for the quiet confirmation that time and truth invariably provide. You weren't waiting for apologies or explanations from those who had moved on. Your focus was on the validation that comes when pretense fades and reality surfaces. You had already sensed the shifts, the cold energy, the performative loyalty, the calculated distance. You saw through the charades without engaging in futile arguments or seeking external validation. True freedom comes from recognizing that closure is often a tether to past narratives. You stepped back, not in defeat but in quiet strength, trusting that truth operates on its own timeline. The confirmation you sought wasn't in their acknowledgement, but in the unfolding reality that mirrored your long-held understanding. The unraveling itself became the undeniable proof. They may have labeled you intense, dramatic, or excessive, but your true state was simply awake in a world still slumbering in comfortable illusions. You weren't reacting emotionally. You were reading the unspoken language of silences and energy shifts, discerning truths buried beneath superficial applause. While others remained oblivious, you braced for the inevitable fall, recognizing the errant weaknesses in the structure. Now, as the masks have fallen and the illusion has shattered, the whispers you once carried alone resonate as echoes in newly awakened minds. Your aim was never revenge or recognition, but the quiet triumph of truth emerging without coercion. You were not bitter or divisive, but clear and ahead of your time. Your growth wasn't an act of pride, but a necessary shedding of constraints. This is not a tale of collapse, but of your unwavering refusal to compromise your perception of reality for the comfort of others. Stand tall, not in arrogance, but in the quiet peace of knowing you were the signal, the warning, and now, the blueprint for those now stirring from their sleep. You were the forecast, not the storm, and your journey through it is your enduring legacy. If this message resonates with the journey you've walked silently, the truths you've carried alone, and the clarity you've refused to surrender, then you already know you're not here by accident. You are part of a rare and awakening few who were never meant to follow the crowd, but to stand apart as a beacon for those still trapped in illusion. Now more than ever, we need spaces that honor depth over performance, truth over comfort, and soul over spectacle. If you feel called to continue walking this path with others who see what you see and feel what you feel, I invite you to join the channel as a member. Your presence helps keep this sacred work alive, supported, and unfiltered. Click Join below to become part of this mission. It's more than membership. It's alignment with truth, community, and spiritual clarity in a world that's just beginning to awaken. Your journey matters. Your voice matters. And together our light will not be dimmed.